Is World of Tanks console worth playing? It's a question that both new players who are trying to get into the game ask frequently on the channel, as well as some of the veterans wondering whether it's even worth continuing to play. And so today's video is going to be an accumulation of a variety of different things that I'm going to talk about and kind of explain to you guys, as well as kind of the history of the game, how it was in the past in terms of specific things. We're not going to go into specific updates, and that will probably be a video that we'll do later on down the line, where we look back at all of the biggest updates World of Tanks console has had to offer. But primarily we're going to be focusing on how the game actually plays, and a lot of returning veterans who once played the game are starting to wonder whether it's worth coming back. So I felt like this was a good video to cover. So with that in mind, let's start off with the past. Now, the past, obviously everyone idolizes it if you've been a player of the past, but for new players, you'll be thinking, is it actually as good as it used to be, or is it worse than it used to be in the current state of the game? And that's kind of where I feel like people get nostalgic as opposed to realistic about how the game actually plays now. And that is something that is slightly controversial. I have played for over 9 years at this point on console. That's how long my account lasts, and I'm pretty sure I had a previous account at some point where I tried it out back on Xbox 360. But primarily the game has evolved massively since the beginning. Now, if you were to go back and have a look at some of the 360 graphics, for example, you'll see the massive change in graphics between then and now. It is absolutely insane how much they've actually changed. Whether that they've kind of kept up to date with the latest graphics settings is something that is, you know, not necessarily I guess been done, and with the newest consoles that we have available, but that's probably due to budget and limitations in having to be able to, you know, basically rewrite the graphics engine or something like that in order to kind of perform at its best on the brand new consoles. And yeah, that's kind of been disappointing with how the graphics have been, and they've been the same way for basically a long time when it comes to Xbox One and PlayStation 4. But of course that has moved on now to the newest consoles, and the game has changed. But ideally, a lot of players will basically think that the old graphics were better, and if they were to actually look at the old graphics, it's completely not the case. They are genuinely horrible to look at. Now, there are things like the HUD that we had in the game. These were some of the biggest things that people got very controversial with when it came to Update 6.0. And for those of you who might be watching this after not having been playing for 3 or 4 years of the game, Update 6.0 was a big update which basically changed a ton of things and was right before the release of the Cold War vehicles. They were not always in the game. And so with the introduction of Update 6.0, they changed the entire crew system, they updated the garage interfaces, they changed how the kind of game visuals were. So the HUD that you see in the game right now is nowhere near what it used to be. The old HUD used to be very cartoony looking. This one is more kind of, I guess, modernized, probably to go alongside the Modern Armor version of the game. And so it is a very different game, to be honest with you. And yeah, whether having, you know, look back on some of the update videos that we did back in the time, whether they were executed amazingly is completely not the case. They were very buggy, and there were huge issues when they first released these. But as it currently stands today, I think that these were some good changes. Whether they introduced some of the best changes, I'm not entirely sure. There were definitely some issues when it comes to the crew perk system that we have in the game. So your commanders, these were all changed. They used to be able to have up to 15 commanders. Each of the perks gave you slightly lower values than they do now, and they basically combined a load of the perks that you got previously into one perk, which now gives you multiple bonuses and also increases on those bonuses that you originally got. So it kind of threw the meta out of the game as it was back then. But I feel like now, having played it for, you know, 3 years, we've got used to it. and it certainly doesn't feel absolutely terrible. It definitely at the time felt like the increase in speed of games. So when you jump into the game and how quickly those games lasted, they seem to be very, very faster than they used to be. And that probably is still the case. It's just we've gotten used to the fast gameplay because everything has very, very good damage per minute. So with that being said, yeah, the past has always been a bit of a dodgy place. There were definitely some mistakes that were made by Wargaming, as well as just generally and people not knowing how to play the game as much as they do now. And I feel like, yeah, it's definitely caused a lot of uproot. There were a lot of people who have left the game who have played for 9 years and stuff like that, and they probably only come back once in a while to give a few games or something like that. But yeah, it was definitely a different place back in the day, and it felt a bit more nostalgic, and it felt a bit more kind of polished in terms of the game. There weren't very many bugs. We definitely see more bugs now than we used to, but yeah, they weren't necessarily anything that would affect the gameplay within the game. But I expect that comes with, I guess, having more advanced stuff in the game, advanced user interfaces, that sort of stuff. That probably comes with that. But either way, yeah, the game now feels a little bit more polished in terms of and up to date to the modern standards. And yeah, I think overall really does work quite well. When you compare it to the previous version, or at least the older version of the game. But for the time, I think the older version was funner. I think it had a lot more aspects. There definitely wasn't as many power creep options. It felt like that has recently come in within the last couple of years, that we've been seeing these kind of very, very novel and unique vehicles into the game that are very, very overpowered or broken or just plain annoying. They might not be, you know, extremely good, but just are pure annoying. And that has certainly been one of the things that has annoyed me over the last couple of years of playing the game. But hey ho, they have to make some money, and I guess that's how they're trying to do it, rather than go through routes of, you know, trying to produce content that might be, you know, locked to people's accounts. They want to keep the whole game available to everyone, and then, you know, monetize the actual vehicles in the game. You know, they could definitely add monetization features so that you don't have to do these broken premiums, but I guess it's probably a lot easier to release a new premium tank than to develop a whole new area of the game or something like that. But either way, it's something that we've had to deal with over the last 2 years, 2 or 3 years. It's constantly been a thing. There has always been overpowered premiums. It just seems that there's been a lot more annoying premiums and yeah, definitely broken ones coming out of the last 2 years. So that's just a little bit of a brief overview of kind of what this game has been like over the course of its history. The development of the game has obviously been ran by Wargaming and Wargaming North America. And essentially what they have done is created a very kind of console-esque game. Anyone can really pick it up. It doesn't take a whole lot of kind of thinking, and they've definitely dumbed it down, I guess, over the last couple of years with the amount of accuracy changes. So there's a lot more firing on the move. There's a lot less kind of jankiness on the controller, having to aim at people, because obviously, you know, when you first come into the game, it can be difficult to understand where you need to hit things, and auto aim has definitely got a lot worse with everyone just basically using it, since it's very, very accurate. Yeah, there are a lot of issues like that, and they come down to kind of the core game mechanics and how Wargaming are trying to make the game widely available to as many players on console, which is unfortunately probably not what you want to hear if you're a veteran, but if you're a new player, that's probably something that's decent for you. But yeah, I feel like the game overall in the last few years has definitely gotten better from where we were in update 6.0, which was a huge decline in how the game actually performed in terms of actual gameplay, and then we're back up to probably where we were, or at least somewhere higher than that, with a new and modernized kind of menus, that sort of things, which I think is good. So overall, in terms of performance of the game, pretty good. But obviously, it's ran by Wargaming. And what have they been like over the years? Well, back in the day, Wargaming were very much a very closed system. where there wasn't a lot of chat between, you know, the content creators or the community within the game. Not to say there was no community engagement, but it was very much limited. There was very much limited involvement between content creators and the actual games company, which led to a lot of frustration with players and updates that might come out, and then they have no idea why they were introduced. No one likes the update, and for some reason there's that disjointed kind of thing that comes about with that. Between the player base and what the devs think that the player base want and what they actually want, it was very much not where I think a lot of the player base actually felt like. And that has definitely improved, coming from the point of someone who both have played the game for 9 years, where you can visually see, you know, how much interaction is going on between the community and the games company themselves, as well as someone who is actively engaged now in the community, and of course is a CC, I guess, for the game, or community contributor. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more involvement, and I've definitely seen that from my end with the community team, and it has been a lot better from that standpoint, where there's a lot more input and a lot more input from the community, a lot more feedback, and Wargaming's starting to listen a little bit more to what the player base actually says in a lot of their feedback. So it's highly imperative, if you play the game and you follow all of the news and the update news that we do on the channel every week, or maybe even twice a week every now and again, yeah, I highly recommend you go and give your feedback on all of the update news, because it does actually get actioned, but usually only if there's multiple reports of something, or maybe there's multiple concerns raised by multiple people. You know, it's that sort of thing. Of course, if you stay silent and don't say anything but get moaning in the background, usually nothing really will happen, because Wargaming don't hear you. And of course, yeah, you can leave comments on my channel, and I can always lay it off to Wargaming if you think something could be interesting. There's definitely been a ton of interesting comments from yourselves, and yeah, I have been collating a huge list, which I'm hoping to kind of slim down and be able to have a chat with Wargaming themselves, and we can maybe do a full video discussing all of the different topics that we've kind of covered with you guys on the messenger. But yeah, it would be cool to see what you guys have to say. Either way, that's kind of how the development side of the game is. Of course, we've had the gameplay side, which has definitely got better. There's a lot more kind of easiness in play, but of course there are certain aspects of the game, like for example the free-to-play experience and the new player experience of World of Tanks console. Now, back in the day, there was training kind of regimes or stuff that you could do when you first logged onto the game that would give you a hint as to how to play the game, stuff like that. Then they've removed it, which was obviously not good for new players who want to get involved in the game, leaving them to fend for themselves, and that definitely got a lot worse. But after that, what they then went and did is, in the most recent times, is they've introduced a system whereby you will play against bots for your first few games, where you're kind of learning how to actually play against bots and stuff like that, or at least how to use your tanks against the bots, which is good. I think it at least gives you an introduction to the game. It's not too challenging, and you can kind of gauge what sort of thing you need to be doing. Whether you want to be playing against bots all of the time, probably not the case, but yeah, it certainly has helped. And they've also introduced various other bits and bobs that will help out new players. There's often very much a case of earning free premium tanks that people can utilize to earn a bit of silver. There's always a kind of operations and challenges going on, which I think Wargaming have done fantastically when it comes to helping just generally all of the players out. This was never a thing back in the day. There was very rarely an earn operation or a challenge that rewarded you so well that we do have now. So this is just something that happens over time, and it's definitely got a lot better. I feel like there's more challenges. There could definitely be more than there is right now, but I feel like in terms of the challenges, there's enough to keep us occupied at the moment. But I would 100% love to see some more long-term challenges that keep you playing in between the season passes and all of that sort of stuff that we have constantly going on throughout the game, where you feel maybe you get into a bit of a grind with certain things and the challenges are a little bit boring. Having some more nuanced stuff would be great. but unfortunately don't have that at the moment. Hopefully Wargaming will listen to that sort of stuff and go ahead and try and introduce some more challenges that are long term. I think it would be brilliant. And yeah, there are definitely some benefits to the current game, and I 100% think it is worth getting into if you enjoy certain aspects of hating your life for the first bit, understanding that you're going to be bad to begin with, as I was absolutely useless for the first 200, 300, 400 games, 500 probably, and then you start to get a little bit of a hang of it. Obviously, I then joined up with some of the friends that I've been playing the game for a little bit longer. They helped me ease into sort of things that I should and shouldn't be doing. And of course, there was tons of content on YouTube that you can look at, not just both console but also PC. Gives you a lot of information that is transferable, and that's kind of how I got into playing this game, and how I'm at something like 26,000 battles, something in that region as we currently stand. So yeah, the game is definitely something that I'd recommend, especially if you're interested in tanks, or at least playing and being competitive and having a bit more strategy to the game itself. And I think over a long period of time you will enjoy it. There are definitely times where you hate it, but at the same time that's pretty much the case for every single game that you play, and this one definitely rewards at least playing and enjoying the game, not worrying too much about your statistics or anything like that, just playing the game as you hopefully should be. And yeah, just a really fun game, and that's why I've enjoyed it. That's why I'm still here 9 years later, and I am nowhere near to be seen near any other game 9 years after I first started playing. So yeah, it's definitely kept me interested and kept me playing the game. So that is basically my opinion, my breakdown of kind of a few things. It's probably not the most in-depth thing that I could possibly do, but these are just some of the off-the-thought kind of stuff that I've come up with that I think maybe is interesting to some of you, maybe sheds a little bit of light into certain updates that came out in the past and how the game used to be. And of course, you guys have been probably playing the game probably just as long as me, or maybe slightly less, and maybe you can add in some extra stuff in the comments that you feel is valuable, and that would be cool to see as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Bit of a weird one, very different to the normal one. I just thought we'd talk about the game, and hopefully it was an interesting one for you. If you did like the video, make sure to like it so it will spread to more people, especially the new players who, you know, have probably never played the game and wondering, should I actually play this one? And of course, subscribe if you aren't already, and I will join you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.